Good evening. Our top story tonight, Thanksgiving is in the books. The Lions broke my heart. The Packers still do not matter. The Cowboys looking really good. Dak Prescott, MVP candidate. We'll get to that in a little bit. Geno Smith and the Seahawks are frauds. They'll make the playoffs, but they are not contenders. The Dolphins are the real deal. The Jets get even worse under Tim Boyle. Robert Saleh is set to be fired, and more on Player Profiler today. Now, of course, we do have to start off with the Detroit Lions. Absolutely broke my heart. As you all know, I am the host of the Believe in Lions podcast alongside former Detroit Lions safety, all pro safety Glover Quinn. And of course, I am also a Lions fan, a Lions supporter. To see them go 0-7 over the last 7 years on Thanksgiving, especially in a loss to the Green Bay Packers, is absolutely heartbreaking. I will never trust the moon again. The waxing gibbous gets the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving once again. And it was just frustrating to watch. Jordan Love, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. Jordan Love is now officially 1-1 against the Detroit Lions, ends a 4-game win streak by the Detroit Lions. Now, before the Lions went on a 4-game win streak, the Packers went on a 5-game win streak. But before that, the Lions were on a 4-game win streak of their own. People like to think that the Packers own the Lions, but that simply is not true. The Lions, when Glover Quinn played against the Lions from 2012 to 2018, he had a winning record. The Lions, better than you think over the past couple years. And so that's why I'm not actually that worried about this loss to the Green Bay Packers. Am I frustrated? Absolutely. Am I upset? Yes, I am. But good teams lose games that they shouldn't sometimes. It is just a fact of life. The New York Jets beat the Philadelphia Eagles earlier this season. The Baltimore Ravens have lost to the Browns when Deshaun Watson destroyed his shoulder. They lost the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kenny Pickett. Good teams lose to teams they shouldn't lose to. I am not worried, but 3 touchdowns from Jordan Love, 39 yards rushing. Jordan Love has a great game. Maybe, just maybe, Jordan Love has figured it out. Maybe Jordan Love really is an NFL quarterback, and maybe part of him figuring it out is Christian Watson. He is so back. I love Christian Watson. Always have, always will. Was a big supporter of him in the preseason. 7 targets, catches 5 of them, 94 yards, and a touchdown. They went to him early. They went to him often. 18.8 yards per reception from Christian Watson. And this is just the beginning, because remember, the case I made for Christian Watson in the preseason was he is clearly the most talented wide receiver on the Green Bay Packers. And so the talent discrepancy between him and the rest of the team should mean he is getting so many targets. And so while he'll be less efficient than he was last year, he's still going to be great in fantasy football. Now, I maybe underestimated the gap, or maybe I overestimated, the gap between Jayden Reed and Christian Watson. Now, I was a fan of Jayden Reed. I thought he was a future wide receiver 2 in the NFL. I thought it was going to happen by the end of the season. I did not think that Jayden Reed was going to become the wide receiver 1 of the Green Bay Packers this quickly, and it appears he has. Now, Christian Watson outperforms Jayden Reed. 94 yards in a TD for Christian Watson, 34 yards in a TD from Jayden Reed, but 8 targets for Jayden Reed leads the team. He also gets 2 carries for 16 yards. Jayden Reed is the real deal. Jayden Reed, Christian Watson going to be making plays for years to come. Now Malik Heath, all of a sudden, undrafted free agent, is able to make some plays, 4 receptions for 46 yards, makes a couple crucial fourth downs, or fourth downs, both of them actually, but Romeo Doubs is outperformed by Malik Heath, but Romeo Doubs for now still the wide receiver 2, runs more routes than Jayden Reed. It is Christian Watson, wide receiver 1, Romeo Doubs, wide receiver 2, Jayden Reed, wide receiver 3 in terms of routes run, but in the pecking order, in the target order, it is Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, and then a vast drop off to Romeo Dobbs. Credit also to Tucker Kraft, his first NFL start, catches his first NFL touchdown, 2 receptions for 15 yards. Now, the Lions are just thoroughly outclassed in this matchup, just completely outplayed across the board, but they still have a chance at the end. Jared Goff, despite 3 fumbles, despite the fact that the Lions' offensive line is whooped up and down the field, they had a chance. Jared Goff has 332 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 1 to Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta, Dynasty tight end 1 at this point, has a touchdown pass to Josh Reynolds. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, disappointing day for his standards, 9 receptions, 95 yards, still over 18 points in fantasy football, but not the day we had hoped. Most of it comes in garbage time at the end of the game in the comeback effort. The one thing I want to point out for the Detroit Lions is Jameson Williams sets a new career high, back-to-back weeks that Jameson Williams sets a career high in percentage of team snaps played. Jameson Williams, currently the wide receiver 3 for the Detroit Lions. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams. And it's only a matter of time before Jameson Williams passes Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds has fallen from grace over recent weeks. He hasn't had the plays he had early in the season, while Jameson Williams, surprisingly efficient over the past couple weeks. He's had his drops, and it seems like he's over those. Jameson Williams becoming a true part of this Detroit Lions offense. At the running back position, Dave Montgomery, 15 carries, 0 for 1 receiving, 71 yards and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, 14 touches, 11 carries, 4 receptions, 73 yards. So not the day we all hoped from the Detroit Lions. I expected more. I hoped for more, but it's going to be okay. The Lions are still a playoff team. Lions are still going to be the 2nd or 3rd seed in the NFC, and it's going to be okay. But before we get to the rest of Thanksgiving, before we get to all your start-sit questions, if you have any, hit us up in the chat. We have a word from the Podfather.
It has been 2 years since Josh Larkey paved the way for fantasy gamers to start expecting... It has been 2 years since Josh Larkey paved the way for fantasy gamers to start expecting positive returns from pick'em games, specifically underdog pick'ems. And how do you do it? Well, you look at the slate and you find a great shootout or a sneaky shootout. You also look for a shit show game. 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in one game. That's right. You can do it. You can do it. And you can 100x your payout on underdog. Think about week 1. Jets-Bills was a shit show. Did we see the Aaron Rodgers injury coming? No, but we knew the Jets have a good defense. We knew the Bills have a good defense. Why not expect the worst? And the worst is what we got. So if you had gone Dalvin Cook less than, Garrett Wilson less than, Aaron Rodgers less than, Josh Allen less than, Gabriel Davis less than, boom, 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 you can go 6 for 6. Same thing in week 2. Oh, week 2. Oh, sneaky shootout there in Philadelphia. Minnesota's going to be in comeback mode, so we'll go Cousins, Jefferson, Hawkinson, more than. Madison, less than. But also, Swift, more than. Boom, 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 boom. That's how you do it with the Underdog Pick'ems, and you use promo code UNDERWORLD to get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You put in $100, Underdog matches that deposit up to $100 with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go start picking. All right, I want to take a moment today to talk to you about data analysis. The data analysis tool, we listen to the users. What do you want? What do you need? And we made it happen. We added popular reports like a fantasy scoring report, air yards report. And if you want to create a new report, but you don't necessarily want to look through every field, we have quick results. Hey, show me the most popular passing data. Show me the most popular rushing data, fantasy data. Done. And the thing just is much faster than it's ever been. And the report builder got a lot easier. I mean, check this out. We break it down into offense, defense. Show me just fantasy data elements. And then when you get results, hey, show me by draft year. Let's take a look at just certain players that played a certain number of snaps or a certain number of games last year. This is the tool that so many of you have been asking for, plus a bunch of dream features that Billy wanted and Cody wanted and I wanted and Dario wanted. So go to the fantasy tools section, click on data analysis, or go to playerprofiler.com/data-analysis.
We are back, and we are here to talk about the Washington Commanders getting smoked by the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys 45-10. Sam Howell, 300 passing yards, 1 interception, only a score on the ground, but that's 6 points in fantasy, no passing touchdowns. And so he remains productive in fantasy football despite the fact that he gets smoked and doesn't even make up for it in garbage time, which is what we always hoped for from Blake Bortles back in the day. He was relevant in fantasy football. And it looks like Howell might be on that same path. Not quite as bad as Blake Bortles. Howell is completing passes, but it's just not quite there. But it does look like the Washington Commanders are going to stick with Sam Howell for at least one more year. They fire the defensive coordinator, fire the defensive back coach, and the statement put out by the Commanders is pretty revealing. So, Josh Harris, who just bought the Washington Commanders, his statement is Ron Rivera recommended firing the defensive coordinator and the DB coach. Said that was going to be the change that they needed to make a jump. And so, Josh Harris fires those guys because obviously Ron Rivera is not going to recommend firing himself. But obviously, that's the direction this team is heading. They have to scapegoat someone right now because the Washington Commanders are still contenders. They're still in the playoff hunt for that 7th seed, which they could win, but it doesn't matter. Winning the 7th seed isn't always a good thing. If you were the Detroit Lions last year, it's a good thing to make the 7th seed. But when you're the Buffalo Bills and Tyrod Taylor is your quarterback, making that 6th seed back in the day, it wasn't a good thing. You barely snuck in. You're not a good team. You're not set up for long-term success. And this was the problem with the New York Giants last year, is they snuck into the playoffs. They got off to a hot start, and then they have petered out since. They have been incredibly disappointing. Now maybe our guy Tommy DeVito ends up making a run. But this is the problem. It is not always a good thing to make the playoffs. Being a one and done team with no future isn't a good thing. And so for the Washington Commanders, they're still technically in the playoff hunt, but it doesn't matter. Ron Rivera is not the future of the Washington Commanders. They're going to move on from him. Maybe they bring Jim Harbaugh in. Michigan gets a win today without Jim Harbaugh. Maybe he moves back to the NFL from the college ranks after all that is going on there. Either way, it's not going to be Ron Rivera. Curtis Samuel, the leading wide receiver for the Washington Commanders, catches 9 of 12 for 100 yards. Terry McLaurin, 11 targets, only catches 4 for 50 yards. He's actually outgained by Jahan Dotson, 5 receptions for 52 yards. My mistake. Brian Robinson, the lead back, he gets 17 touches. Antonio Gibson gets 9, but it's not the discrepancy that we would hope for if you're a Brian Robinson supporter. It's not as close as you'd like if it's an Antonio Gibson supporter and Brian Robinson altogether. A disappointing day. He's been pretty good for fantasy football, but not this time. The Dallas Cowboys dominate. DaRon Bland sets history. 5, count them, 5 pick sixes, sets history, the most all time in a single season. 5 interceptions for touchdowns by DaRon Bland. And you look at history, Deion Sanders has 9 in his entire NFL career. We look at Deion Sanders, the playmaker, and he has 9 pick sixes in his career. And obviously, part of that is teams started to avoid Deion Sanders, but still, 9 pick sixes, and DaRon Bland has 5 in a single season. DaRon Bland is the defensive player of the year. I understand we typically give it to pass rushers. We look for those sack numbers, those pressure numbers. Stephon Gilmore won it back in the day for being locked down. Darrelle Revis won it back in the day for being locked down. But DaRon Bland has already set history. How does he not win an award, right? I mean, he could have a disappointing rest of the season, but he set history with 5 interceptions for touchdowns. And I do not expect a drop off. DaRon Bland is really good. And so he gets 1 touchdown. The Dallas Cowboys offense gets 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns total for the Cowboys. Tony Pollard scores a rushing touchdown, 103 yards from scrimmage from Tony Pollard. He is back. Rico Dowdle gets a receiving touchdown, his only reception. Also gets 3 carries. CeeDee Lamb gets a touchdown. Brandon Cooks gets a touchdown. Kavontae Turpin gets a touchdown. And this brings us to our title conversation. Dak Prescott, 4 touchdowns, 331 yards. You look at the box score on the season. He leads the NFL in touchdown passes with 23. Now, granted, Josh Allen has 22. He's probably going to pass him this weekend when he plays the Philadelphia Eagles. But that'll still put him second in the NFL. Next up is guys at 18, 17 touchdowns. Probably not going to pass Dak Prescott at this point, or at least in this week. Dak Prescott also second in completion percentage behind Brock Purdy. He is second in passer rating behind Brock Purdy. And I got to tell you, if the NFL is given the conversation, if the choices are Brock Purdy versus Dak Prescott's winning MVP. Quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys versus Brock Purdy, who has all the weapons around him. It's a narrative-driven award. And the narrative of the Dallas Cowboys quarterback popping off, starring out versus Brock Purdy's narrative, which is always and forever will be the weapons and Kyle Shanahan. Way of the road. He's also 5th in the NFL in passing yards, 5th in yards per attempt. And entering this game, we don't have the full updated stats on Player Profiler because we update after all the games have played. But Dak Prescott entering this game, he was 1st in the NFL in pressured completion percentage. He was 2nd in the NFL in catchable pass rate, 2nd in accuracy rating, and 2nd in money throws. Dak Prescott is making those special throws down the field. Dak Prescott is playing at a level we have never seen him before. At this point, Dak Prescott is the MVP. And how crazy is that the Dallas Cowboys could have the Defensive Player of the Year, and they should have the Defensive Player in the Year in Deron Bland, and then could have the MVP in Dak Prescott. The Dallas Cowboys are a team that absolutely terrifies me as a Lions fan in the NFC. Unlike the 49ers, and I get it. The 49ers are a good team. They're a scary team. They did beat up on the Dallas Cowboys earlier this season, but I just don't think that is who these two teams are at this point in the season. The offense of the Dallas Cowboys has completely changed. Defense of the 49ers remains dominant. Brock Purdy has been exposed just a little bit. He's still performing great. The numbers are still there, but Brock Purdy, touchdown, interception, 31-13 win. But it's not the same with Brock Purdy. Brandon Ayuk catches a touchdown pass. The rest are all rushing scores. Deebo Samuel has 1. Christian McCaffrey has 2. And the Seahawks are frauds. I don't even know if you want to call them frauds because no one ever thought they were up here. But I thought they were a competitive 6th, 7th seed in the NFC. And at this point, I don't think so. I really don't. And their trade for Leonard Williams implied that they thought they were a competitor, they were a contender, but they just got drummed again by the San Francisco 49ers. They have just been smoked 4 times in the past year. They were smoked twice in the regular season. They were smoked in the playoffs, smoked once again. DK Metcalf, 9 targets, only catches 3. Tyler Lockett, only 30 yards. Jackson Smith and Jigba leads the team with 41 yards on just 2 receptions. The one thing we can take away, Zach Charbonnet, 88% snap share. Great. Love it. No Kenneth Walker. We'll see if he plays next week. I doubt it. Sounds like Kenneth Walker is more of a week-to-week type of guy. Zach Charbonnet probably going to be a bell cow once again. But 14 carries, 4 receptions, 18 touches for Zach Charbonnet. Love to see that. And love to see the Dolphins beat up on the New York Jets, even with Tua Tagovailoa throwing 2 interceptions, throwing a pick 6, only 1 touchdown from Tua. The talent discrepancy between the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins is just enough for the blowout. Dolphins win 34-12. Touchdown pass goes to Tyreek Hill. 2 touchdowns for Raheem Mostert. He now has 15 on the season, leads the NFL. Raheem Mostert really is one of, if not the best draft picks that you could have made in fantasy football. And I wish I had drafted Raheem Mostert. I was set on Jeff Wilson. I thought, he's the goal line back. He's the short yardage guy. he can do enough. And then, Jeff Wilson gets hurt in the preseason and it is a complete wash. But Jeff Wilson does look pretty good in this game. 11 carries for 56 yards, 3 receptions for 17 yards. That's 73 yards on the day. But it is all about Raheem Mostert, 94 yards, 2 scores. It is also all about the receivers. Tyreek Hill, 102 and a touchdown. Jalen Waddle, 114. And then after that, Jeff Wilson is number 3 in receptions on the team, number 3 in targets. Heart goes out to Jalen Phillips, recovering from a torn ACL. We need to get rid of turf in the NFL. We need to get rid of turf, especially in New York. It is just awful. The amount of Achilles tears that we have seen. Sorry, I might have said ACL earlier. It is an Achilles for Jalen Phillips, but the amount of Achilles injuries that we have seen, the amount of non-contact injuries that happen on the New York Jets, New York Giants field, it is just, my heart goes out to Jalen Phillips. I wish him a speedy recovery. As for the New York Jets, they will start Tim Boyle once again, even though he is awful. He is dreadful. He is no better than Zach Wilson. I think he is actually quite a bit worse than Zach Wilson, but you can't just pivot back to Zach Wilson. If they're going to start another quarterback, they got to pivot to Trevor Siemian, and Trevor Siemian probably doesn't know the playbook just well enough yet that they can just thrust. Well, sorry, he probably knows the playbook well enough. He's been there with the team since week 1, since Rodgers tore his AC or Achilles, so that'd be week 2 actually. But he's been there. He knows the playbook. He just hasn't had the reps. Now as QB2, he'll get a little bit more reps. He'll probably work in with the starting offense. But before, remember, he was on the practice squad, so he's not throwing to Garrett Wilson ever. They don't want to set him up for failure, so they start Tim Boyle once again. But it doesn't matter at this point. It's going to be bad no matter what. Garrett Wilson, he's able to bail himself out with a touchdown, 7 receptions, 44 yards. But it's just terrible. The New York Jets were so heavily loaded on this year, and they based so much on Aaron Rodgers. Everything was based on Aaron Rodgers. What does Aaron Rodgers want? Oh, well, he wants Randall Cobb. Doesn't matter that Randall Cobb is awful. Doesn't matter that Randall Cobb is washed at this point. He wants him, so we got to have him on our roster. Well, Aaron Rodgers wants Allen Lazard, so we got to go out and overpay drastically for Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard, by the way, healthy scratch yesterday against the Miami Dolphins because he's been so bad this year. But Aaron Rodgers has to have his guys. And I get that to a point. The signings of Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, those are forgivable. They had Corey Davis in training camp. They didn't expect him to retire. I understand that. They had Garrett Wilson. They got rid of Braxton Berrios, which maybe they should have kept him around. McCole Hardman is brought in and then traded away because they didn't think he was good enough, even though he was better than Randall Cobb all the time. But they had to have Randall Cobb on the active roster, even though Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing. That all could be forgiven. But the lack of a second quarterback in New York, the fact that they didn't go out and get Carson Wentz, the fact that they didn't go out and get Joe Flacco, the fact that Zach Wilson is just set to be QB2 because Aaron Rodgers likes Tim Boyle, because Tim Boyle was willing to run from the sideline to watch him do the Key and Peele celebration. Sorry. That is how you run your franchise. That is why Zach Wilson is QB2, because Tim Boyle has to be QB3 because Rodgers likes him. It didn't make any sense then. It doesn't make any sense now. And at this point, it looks like Joe Douglas is going to be out as general manager. And the offensive line, look at that too. That is on Joe Douglas. It's not Robert Saleh's fault that he has no offensive line. It's not Robert Saleh's fault that he has no quarterback, that he's stuck with Zach Wilson, because his options were Zach Wilson or Tim Boyle, who is worse than Zach Wilson because the general manager wouldn't go out and add another quarterback. But I think Robert Saleh gets caught in the crosshairs. I think both Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are out from their positions running the NFL, running the New York Jets. And Aaron Rodgers will have new coaches next year that he's probably going to get to hire and will once again get to make all the decisions. But that is a conversation for another day. Tomorrow, we have a bunch of good games and a bunch of bad games. The Bucs at Colts. Colts are 2.5-point favorites. That would mean on a neutral site, the Bucs are favored by half a point. I get that. I tend to lean towards the Bucs. I think the Bucs are going to cover. I think the Bucs are probably going to win. Baker Mayfield versus Gardner Minshew, though, I mean, who knows? Patriots favored by 4 points against the New York Giants. That means they'd be favored by 7 points on a neutral field. I don't get that. They cut Will Greer. Looks like Mac Jones is going to get another start for the New England Patriots. I don't know. I think the Giants are going to cover this. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants win. And let's be honest, the Patriots should want the Giants to win. The Patriots should be trying to lose. The Patriots should be tanking. But Belichick's not going to be there next year to benefit from the tank. So who knows how this shakes out. But the Giants should want to lose to get a better pick, to get a new quarterback, because Daniel Jones isn't the answer. Tommy DeVito, not the answer. And the Patriots should want to tank to get a new, better pick too. We'll see how that shakes out. Steelers favored by 1.5 against the Bengals means a 4.5-point favorite on a neutral field. Steelers are going to win that game without Joe Burrow. Jake Browning, not the answer. Bengals also failed to find a backup quarterback. They also should have gone out and added Carson Wentz, but the Bengals, the pride comes before the fall. The Bengals should just lose the rest of the season. Titans are favored by 3.5 points at the Carolina Panthers, which means on a neutral field, the Titans would only be favored by 1.5. I don't understand that at all. The Titans are a better team with Will Levis. Bryce Young, not the answer. So give me the Titans. Absolutely. Jaguars at Texans. Jaguars favored by 1 point. That'd mean they're favored by 4 on a neutral field, which makes sense because the Jaguars on paper are a better team, but the way the Texans have been playing this year, I don't know about that. I think the Texans are going to cover that spread, if not win the game at home. I already beat them earlier in the season. Saints are favored by 1.5 at the Falcons, which means on the road, on a neutral site, they are 4.5-point favorites. Give me the Saints. Give me the Rams to cover against the Cardinals. 2-point favorites on the road. A lot of road games that we are taking this week, but the Rams, I expect, would cover the 5-point spread if they were on a neutral site. I think the Rams cover a 2-point spread. Matthew Stafford versus Kyler Murray. It's close. I think I'd rather take Kyler Murray at this point, one-on-one, but the talent that the Rams have, I think I lean towards. We also have the Browns at the Broncos. Broncos only favored by 1 point at home, which would mean on a neutral site, the Browns are favored by 2. Russell Wilson, a 2-point underdog to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. That does not add up whatsoever. Give me the Broncos. Bills at Eagles. Eagles favored by 3. That means it's a pick 'em on a neutral site. Ooh, this one's going to be tough. The Bills are in tough. They are fighting for their playoff life. I lean towards the Eagles, but the Bills are backed into a corner. All I can say about this one is this is going to be the game of the week. Bills versus Eagles. Make sure you are watching that. I understand Red Zone is a lot of fun, but you don't need to watch the rest of the 4 o'clock slate. The rest of the 4 o'clock slate, as we mentioned, Browns at Broncos, Chiefs at Raiders. You don't need to watch those. Just focus in on the Bills at the Eagles. Going to be a great game. Can't wait to see that. Mentioned Chiefs at Raiders. Chiefs favored by 10 points. That means they'd be favored by 13 on a neutral field. Take the Chiefs, I guess. I wouldn't bet this game, period, but Chiefs are better than the Raiders, and it is just going to be another one of those games. I understand what they're doing with Antonio Pierce. I love it. I'm here for it. I would be happy to see Antonio Pierce as the head coach of the Vegas Raiders. There's just a massive talent discrepancy between the Chiefs and the Raiders at this point. Ravens play the Chargers Sunday night football. Ravens favored by 3 points on the road. That means on a neutral site, they're favored by 6. Give me the Raiders. The Chargers are just not that team, especially in prime time. They always fold. Then on Monday night football, we get the Bears at the Vikings. Vikings favored by 3 points at home, which means on a neutral site, Vikings versus Bears, Josh Dobbs versus Justin Fields is a zero-sum game. It's a pick 'em. And I just don't get it. I understand that Justin Fields is better than Josh Dobbs, at least as a prospect, but is he really better than Josh Dobbs from what we've seen? And now I don't expect Justin Jefferson to make his return this week, but I just think the Minnesota Vikings are better than the Chicago Bears. If you have any other questions, make sure you tune into the Player Profiler Start Sit That Run on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. All going to be running starting at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Tune into that, and I will see you next time.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.